Hi, in this video I am going to show you how to make the sides of the Rockport basket. The basket comes in three sizes: large, medium, or a wine carrier. The instructions for making the sides are all the same. You're just going to cut your fabric and you're interfacing different sizes. Now this is a whole cloth project. So you're going to be using either a print that is non-directional, or if you want to use a directional print, we'll go over that later. You're going to cut a piece of fabric, and you're going to cut two pieces of Inner Form Plus. That is a double-sided fusible foam-based batting. You will fuse your fabric to the larger piece of the Inner Form Plus. When you do that, make sure you have parchment paper or a Teflon ironing sheet underneath so that when you iron this, it doesn't fuse to your ironing board. Iron your fabric onto this piece with a hot steam iron, and then flip it over, fold it in half, and crease the top. You'll slide your second piece of Inner Form in between, matching the edges of the foam, and then you're going to fold the top over, match the raw edges of your fabric, and pin. Fold it in half, match the raw edges of your fabric, and pin, and so forth, all the way across the bottom. Now the Inner Form may sit just a little bit below your pinning. That's fine. You just want to pin it so that the next step is a little bit easier, and that is you're going to fuse all your layers together. You're going to iron it with a hot steam iron on one side, flip it over, and iron it with a hot steam iron on the other side. Now, if you want to use a directional print, for example, in this fabric right here, what you're going to do is you're going to cut your fabric just a little bit larger than you would for a non-directional print. And then you're going to cut that piece in half and sew the two sides together so that the print will face up on one side and up on the other side. Now I'll show you what I mean by that. So I have taken the upper part of that fabric and I've cut a little bit wider, cut it into two pieces, and I've sewn them together so that the print faces upward on the outside and the print faces upward on the inside. This is a little bit hard to see, but this is a building and there's the sun shining down. So you've got your fabric print going in the right direction on the outside as well as the inside. The result will be a piece of fabric the same width as if you were cutting a non-directional piece of fabric, and you're going to iron it on the same way. Fold it in half, making sure that seam is right on the fold. Then you'll slide your second piece of batting in between and pin all the way across. Fuse one side, flip it over, and fuse the other side. So your resulting piece will be something like this. So the pins are here. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to stitch 1 inch from the bottom and 1 inch from the top. To do that, you may have to draw some lines. Now I draw the lines either with a Choco liner or a Frisian pen. If I'm using darker fabric, I tend to use the Choco liner. If I'm using lighter fabric, I use the Frisian pen. Now, draw a line 1 inch from the bottom, stitch the bottom seam first, and then go back, draw a line 1 inch from the top and stitch the top one. That anchors all of your layers together so you can do your center stitching pretty easy. Now if you're using the Choco liner, I will draw a couple of lines, stitch on those lines, draw a few more lines, stitch on those lines, and you're drawing these lines 1 inch apart. So that will be your first set of stitching all the way around. Now I only do a couple of lines with the Choco liner because the chalk tends to disappear when you're working with the fabric. So draw a couple of lines, stitch them, draw a few more lines and stitch them. If you're using the Frisian pen, that stays. So that is a good tool to use, especially if you're using lighter fabric. So stitch across your 1 inch lines all the way down. Then you're going to go back in and you're going to stitch in between all your lines. Do not stitch above that 1 inch line or below the bottom 1 inch line. So the next thing, after you've done all of your stitching, then you're going to square up your piece. You will square up the ends. You'll square this end and this end according to the pattern directions. And then you're going to cut the bottom only. You will not cut that top folded edge. When you cut the bottom, you want to cut just below your first stitching line. So even if the pattern says this should be 7 inches wide and you're at 7 1/4 just below that line, cut at 7 1/4. You want this stitching line to be the anchor of the bottom of the side of your basket. So once you've done that, you're going to bind it. And you're going to bind this just like you would bind a quilt. You're going to sew the binding on the outside and then flip it to the inside. And this way may be where you differ from a quilt. You're actually going to top stitch the binding to the inside. So fold it to the inside and top stitch very close to that fold. So you don't have to hand stitch this. Your stitching will show on the outside, but it will look like part of the pattern. So that's it to making the sides.